Hello, and welcome to Health Storytellers. In a world of quick fixes and loud promises, we believe the most profound truths about wellness are found not in shouting, but in sharing, in stories. We explore the quiet science, the personal journeys, and the evidence-based methods that lead to lasting change, not just for the body, but for the mind and soul. If you're seeking a path to sustainable health, a story you can truly live within, you're in the right place. Find a comfortable spot, press play, and let's begin. Let's begin with a moment of quiet honesty. It is not a dramatic scene of frustration or a tearful confession. It is more subtle, more pervasive. It is the feeling that settles in during a pause in a hectic day. Perhaps you are looking at a photograph of yourself, not from years ago, but from last season, and a silent, bewildered thought forms. How did I get back here again? Or maybe you are standing in front of your closet, faced with the tangible proof of a body that has changed in ways you did not consent to. Your choice is represented by a spectrum of sizes. It is the mental fatigue of scanning a restaurant menu, not for what you desire, but for the item that will do the least damage. It is the internal calculus that turns a simple act of nourishment into a problem to be solved. This is the modern landscape of weight management, a terrain cluttered with the wreckage of abandoned efforts. We are the most informed generation in history regarding nutrition and exercise physiology. We possess, in the devices we hold in our hands, access to more dietary protocols, workout regimens, and expert opinions than any prior era. We understand the fundamental principle of energy balance. And yet, the collective experience is one of cyclical effort and recidivism. We embark on programs with genuine hope, experience initial success only to encounter the inevitable plateau, the social interruption, the emotional trigger, or simply the grinding exhaustion of perpetual vigilance. Then the slow return to old patterns begins, often accompanied by a weight that not only returns but brings reinforcements. This cycle has a cost that far exceeds physical pounds. It erodes self-trust. Every ended diet becomes a quiet narrative of personal failing, a piece of evidence in the case we build against our own resolve. We begin to attribute the outcome to a flaw in our character, a lack of willpower, laziness, an inherent weakness for comfort. The language we use turns punitive. We speak of being good or bad, of cheating, of foods that are sinful. We frame the process as a battle, and in any battle, there is an enemy. Too often, we unwittingly cast our own bodies, our own instincts, in that role. The central paradox of this struggle is both elegant and agonizing. If the solution were merely a matter of knowledge and discipline, it would be universally achievable. The fact that it is not, that brilliant, disciplined, and knowledgeable people still find themselves at this same crossroads, is the clearest signal that our fundamental model is incomplete. The calories in, calories out framework is not incorrect from a thermodynamic perspective. It is simply insufficient from a human one. It reduces a profoundly complex biological, neurological, and psychological process to a ledger sheet. It treats the human body as a simple furnace, when in reality, it is more akin to a sophisticated adaptive ecosystem governed by a sentient command center. This reductionist view ignores the dynamic feedback loops that regulate our energy storage. It does not account for the fact that the calories outside of the equation is not a constant. It is a variable deeply influenced by sleep, stress, hormone levels, and the very process of calorie restriction itself. It dismisses the powerful subconscious drivers of behavior rooted in our evolutionary past. Most critically, it fails to address the organ that interprets all of these signals, the human brain. When we declare, "I know what to do, I just can't seem to do it," we are giving voice to a critical truth. The gap between knowledge and sustained action is not a moral canyon. It is a neurological and psychological one. Therefore, the journey towards sustainable transformation cannot begin with another set of external rules imposed upon a resistant system. It must begin with a fundamental shift in perspective. We must move from the paradigm of control to the paradigm of collaboration, from force to understanding. This is not a softening of standards, but a strategic evolution. It is an acknowledgement that long-term success requires us to work with the grain of our own biology and psychology, not against it. The latest convergence of research from neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and endocrinology offers this very path. It tells a new, more compassionate, and ultimately more effective story. This story posits that sustainable weight loss is not the primary goal, but rather a natural byproduct of a deeper process. The successful recalibration of your internal regulatory systems and the conscious redesign of your daily environment and habits. It is a process of becoming, as neuroscientist Dr. Judson Brewer might frame it, curious about your own impulses rather than controlling of them. It is about learning to distinguish between physiological hunger and hedonic craving, a distinction mediated by different neural pathways. It is about understanding that willpower is a finite cognitive resource that depletes with use, and that reliance on it as a primary strategy is a recipe for eventual failure. Instead, we must learn to build environments and routines that make healthy choices the default, the path of least resistance. This scientific approach reframes the entire endeavor. The question ceases to be, how do I restrict myself today? And becomes, how do I nourish and support my system today? The focus shifts from the punitive to the strategic. We begin to ask different questions. How can I structure my morning to reduce decision fatigue? What does my body's satiety signal actually feel like when it is not shouted over by processed, hyperpalatable foods? How does sleep deprivation hijack my hunger hormones? How can I make the healthy choice, not the harder choice, but the easier, more obvious one? This is the promise that lies beyond the noisy crossroads of quick fixes and contradictory advice. It is a quieter path, one of self-experimentation and patient observation. It requires us to become students of our own unique physiology and psychology. It is less about following a map drawn by someone else, and more about learning to navigate by your own internal compass. As we prepare to take the first steps on this path, we leave behind the language of battle. We lay down the weapons of guilt and shame. Instead, we pick up the tools of curiosity, evidence, and self-compassion. Our first destination is not the grocery store or the gym. It is the most complex and influential organ in your body, the seat of every habit, every craving, every decision you have ever made about your health. Our first task is to understand its operating system, not to wage war upon it. For when we finally learn to collaborate with our own minds, we unlock the only transformation that has ever been truly sustainable. Having stood at the crossroads and recognized the limitations of sheer willpower and restrictive rules, we now turn our attention to the core of the challenge, the human brain. To build a transformation that endures, we must first understand the architect. Our behaviors, particularly those related to food and routine, are not random acts of poor judgment. They are, in large part, the output of a sophisticated, efficiency-driven operating system that has been shaped by evolution and refined through a lifetime of repetition. This system's primary objective is survival, and a key to survival is the conservation of cognitive energy. The brain, while comprising only about 2% of body weight, consumes a disproportionate 20% of the body's energy resources. To operate efficiently, it has developed a method for automating repetitive tasks, freeing up its higher-order processing centers for novel problems and threats. This method is the foundation of habit formation. Neurologically, habit formation involves a shift in activity from the prefrontal cortex, PFC, to the basal ganglia. The PFC is the seat of executive function, the part of the brain responsible for deliberate decision-making, complex planning, and self-control. It is the CEO of the mind, but it is also a metabolically expensive and easily fatigued region. The basal ganglia, a set of structures deeper within the brain, are involved in the development of emotions, memories, and, crucially, pattern recognition, and the execution of automatic routines. The process of creating a habit can be understood through a simple, powerful loop, first articulated by researchers at MIT and popularized by Charles Duhigg, the cue routine reward loop. The cue, this is a trigger that initiates the behavior. It can be internal, a feeling of boredom, stress, or fatigue, or external, a time of day, a specific location, the sight of a particular food, or the company of certain people. The cue tells the brain to go into automatic mode. The routine, this is the behavior itself, the physical, mental, or emotional action you take. This could be walking to the pantry, opening a bag of chips, scrolling through social media, or pouring a glass of wine. The reward. This is the positive reinforcement the brain receives from the behavior. The reward satisfies a craving. Importantly, the reward is not always the pleasure of the food itself. It can be the distraction from work stress, the numbing of an unpleasant emotion, a momentary sensory stimulation, or even a sense of social belonging. Once this loop is established, cue triggers routine which delivers reward, a powerful neurological pathway is cemented. The brain begins to anticipate the reward as soon as it recognizes the cue, creating a sense of craving. This craving is what powers the habit loop, making the routine feel almost compulsory. The behavior transitions from a conscious choice to an automatic script run by the basal ganglia. This is efficiency in action, but it becomes problematic when the automated script, like an afternoon vending machine visit or evening dessert, no longer aligns with our conscious health goals. This brings us to the critical flaw in relying on willpower as a primary strategy. Willpower, or self-regulation, is a function of that already overtaxed prefrontal cortex. Research by Baumeister and others on ego depletion suggests that willpower is a finite resource that can be exhausted. Every act of self-control throughout the day, resisting a distraction, managing an emotional reaction, making a difficult decision, draws from this same pool of mental energy. By evening, when the cue of fatigue or relaxation appears, the PFC is often too depleted to override the well-grooved habit loop powered by the basal ganglia. The result is not a character failure. It is a predictable physiological and neurological outcome. Therefore, the science-backed method for sustainable change does not involve fighting this operating system. Instead, it involves strategically reprogramming it. We cannot eliminate cues or our brain's desire for rewards, but we can consciously redesign the routines and, to some extent, the rewards themselves. This is where the first practical pillar of our transformation emerges: environmental and behavioral design. The principle is straightforward, yet profound. Make the desired behavior easier to initiate and the competing behavior harder to access. You are not relying on a fatigued PFC to make the right choice in a moment of temptation. You are using your rested, conscious mind to design an environment where the healthy choice is the default, automatic path. This design operates on multiple levels. Physical environment. This is the most direct application. It involves structuring your surroundings to support your goals. Place a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter, not in the crisper drawer. Store less healthy snacks in opaque containers on a high shelf, or do not purchase them in bulk. Pre-portion snacks into single servings. Keep your water bottle filled and visible. Lay out your workout clothes the night before. You are engineering friction for unwanted habits and momentum for desired ones. Cognitive environment. This involves managing your mental landscape to reduce the cognitive load that depletes willpower. Establish routines to minimize trivial decisions. A weekly meal plan or a standard breakfast eliminates dozens of daily food choices. A consistent morning or evening routine automates healthy behaviors. The goal is to conserve prefrontal cortex resources for genuine, unavoidable challenges, not for deciding what to eat for lunch. Emotional environment. Recognize the emotional cues that drive many of your habit loops. If stress is a primary cue for unhealthy snacking, the solution is not just to remove the snacks. It is to design a new, healthier routine to deliver a similar reward: stress relief. This could be a 5-minute breathing exercise, a brisk walk around the block, or listening to a favorite song. You are not removing the reward. You are finding a more aligned method to achieve it. By engaging in this deliberate design, you stop treating your brain as an adversary to be subdued and start treating it as a partner to be guided. You acknowledge its need for efficiency and reward, and you proactively build systems that satisfy those needs in ways that serve your long-term well-being. The battle for control evaporates, replaced by a process of intelligent, compassionate engineering. With our environment redesigned to support rather than sabotage us, we create the stable foundation necessary for the next phase of transformation. We have addressed the how of action. Now we must turn to the what. It is time to move from managing our external landscape to understanding the internal dialogue of nourishment, to learn the language our body uses to communicate its true needs. With a foundation built upon understanding our brain's habitual operating system, we can now turn our attention from the architecture of action to the substance of nourishment itself. For decades, the dominant nutritional dialogue has been conducted in a single, reductive currency: the calorie. This has framed eating as a purely economic transaction, a balance of deposits and withdrawals. However, emerging research compels us to adopt a far more sophisticated and informative vocabulary. It reveals that food is not merely fuel, it is information. Every meal is a complex set of biochemical instructions sent to every cell in your body, influencing hormones, gene expression, neural pathways, and critically, the very signals of hunger and satiety. To view food solely through the lens of caloric value is to ignore this rich, dynamic conversation. 100 calories from a sugar-sweetened beverage and 100 calories from steamed broccoli are mathematically equivalent in a laboratory bomb calorimeter, but they are metabolically and hormonally worlds apart within the human body. The former delivers a rapid influx of fructose and glucose with minimal accompanying nutrients, triggering a cascade of hormonal responses designed to manage a sugar surge. The latter provides a package of fiber, vitamins, phytochemicals, and structured carbohydrates that the body must dismantle slowly, producing an entirely different hormonal and satiety profile. This brings us to the core concept of this phase, the satiety framework. Sustainable weight management is impossible without a reliable, trusted signal of fullness, a physiological stop command that you can perceive and honor. The chronic struggle with overeating often stems not from a lack of discipline, but from a breakdown in this fundamental communication system. Ultra-processed foods, engineered for hyperpalatability, are designed to override these natural satiety signals. They provide what scientists call high calorie density with low satiety per calorie, encouraging consumption beyond caloric need before the body's natural feedback loops can register fullness. Therefore, the science-backed method shifts the focus from restrictive calorie counting to proactive satiety optimization. The goal is to compose meals that efficiently trigger and sustain the hormonal and neural signals of satisfaction, making comfortable moderation a natural outcome, not an act of white-knuckled restraint. 3 primary nutritional levers are critical in this endeavor: protein, fiber, and dietary fat. Protein plays a paramount role. Its consumption triggers the release of hormones like peptide YY, PYY, and glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, which are potent signals of satiety sent from the gut to the brain. Furthermore, protein has a higher thermic effect of food than carbohydrates or fats, meaning the body expends more energy simply to digest and metabolize it. Perhaps most importantly, adequate protein intake is essential for the preservation of lean muscle mass during any period of caloric adjustment. Since muscle tissue is metabolically active, preserving it helps maintain a higher resting metabolic rate. A meal or snack anchored by a quality source of protein, such as lean meats, fish, eggs, legumes, or dairy, creates a longer-lasting sense of fullness and provides the building blocks for metabolic health. Fiber, particularly the viscous, soluble fiber found in oats, legumes, apples, and Brussels sprouts, acts as a physical and biochemical regulator. It slows gastric emptying, the rate at which food leaves the stomach. This slower transit time promotes a gradual release of nutrients into the bloodstream, preventing sharp spikes and subsequent crashes in blood sugar. This stable glycemic response is key to managing insulin, a hormone that, when frequently elevated, can promote fat storage and blunt satiety signals. Furthermore, fiber adds bulk to food without adding digestible calories, contributing to physical distension in the stomach, which is itself a direct neural signal of fullness transmitted via the vagus nerve. Dietary fat, when sourced from whole foods like avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil, also contributes significantly to satiety. Fat triggers the release of hormones like cholecystokinin, CCK, and slows digestion, contributing to a sustained feeling of satisfaction after a meal. It also carries fat-soluble vitamins and makes food more palatable, which is psychologically important for meal satisfaction and preventing a sense of deprivation. The practical application of this science is not a rigid diet, but a flexible compositional principle. Instead of asking, "How many calories is this?" the guiding question becomes, "How will this combination of foods make me feel in 1 hour and in 3 hours?" A breakfast of a sugary pastry and a latte may be similar in calories to a breakfast of scrambled eggs with spinach and a side of avocado. But the latter's strategic combination of protein, fiber, and healthy fat will generate a profoundly different hormonal and satiety response, influencing energy, focus, and cravings for the remainder of the morning. This approach also necessitates a mindful engagement with the sensory experience of eating, a concept supported by the neuroscience of cephalic phase responses. The sight, smell, and anticipation of food trigger preparatory digestive secretions and metabolic reactions. Eating slowly, without distraction, allows these signals to fully engage and for the satiety hormones released from the gut to travel to the brain and register their effect, a process that can take 15 to 20 minutes. Rushed, distracted eating often bypasses this feedback loop entirely, leading to mechanical overconsumption before the body's full signal can be perceived. By adopting the satiety framework, you transition from being a passive consumer of calories to an active composer of nourishment. You learn to build meals that speak the language of your body's own regulatory systems, providing the specific information required to trigger contentment and turn off the drive to eat. This is not about eating less. It is often about eating more. More volume of nutrient-dense, fiber-rich, whole foods that collectively deliver a powerful message of sufficiency to your brain. This internal communication, however, does not exist in a vacuum. It is part of a larger rhythmic cycle that governs all of human biology. To fully harmonize with our body's language, we must next align our patterns of nourishment and activity with this deeper primordial pulse, our circadian rhythm. Our exploration has thus far equipped us with a powerful understanding of our brain's habitual machinery and the language of nutritional satiety. Yet, these systems do not operate in a static, uniform state. They are conducted by a deeper, more fundamental biological metronome, the circadian rhythm. This approximately 24-hour internal timing system, governed by a master clock in the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, orchestrates the daily ebb and flow of nearly every physiological process, from hormone secretion and body temperature to cellular repair and cognitive function. To pursue sustainable health while ignoring this intrinsic rhythm is to row a boat against a powerful, unseen current. The circadian system's primary regulator is light. The morning's blue light spectrum, perceived by specialized cells in the retina, signals the SCN to suppress the sleep-promoting hormone melatonin and trigger a cascade of events that promote alertness, elevate core body temperature, and optimize metabolism for activity and nutrient processing. As daylight fades, melatonin production rises, initiating a wind-down phase dedicated to restoration, repair, and memory consolidation. This cycle is not a mere suggestion from our biology. It is the foundational schedule upon which our hormonal orchestra performs. When our lifestyle choices fall out of sync with this endogenous rhythm, a state known as circadian misalignment, the consequences for weight regulation are profound and multifaceted. The science reveals that it is not only what and how much we eat, but when we eat and how we sleep that critically informs our body's propensity to store or utilize energy. The most direct and well-documented impact of circadian disruption comes from sleep deprivation. Consistently obtaining less than 7 hours of quality sleep per night initiates a cascade of hormonal dysregulation conducive to weight gain. Two key hormones are particularly affected. Leptin, the hormone secreted by fat cells that signals satiety to the brain, decreases with sleep loss. Ghrelin, the hormone secreted by the stomach that stimulates appetite, increases. This combination creates a potent biological imperative to seek more calories, particularly from energy-dense, high-carbohydrate foods. Furthermore, sleep deprivation impairs the function of the prefrontal cortex, our center for executive control and decision-making, while simultaneously amplifying activity in the brain's amygdala, which processes reward and desire. This neural shift makes resisting cravings and making deliberate, health-aligned choices significantly more challenging. The tired brain seeks rapid energy and immediate gratification, perfectly priming the environment for habitual, less nutritious choices. Beyond sleep, the timing of our meals plays a crucial role in metabolic efficiency. The concept of chrononutrition examines how our body's response to food varies across the 24-hour cycle. Insulin sensitivity, the body's efficiency in ushering glucose from the bloodstream into cells, is typically highest in the morning and declines as the day progresses. This suggests our physiology is primed to process larger meals earlier in the day. Consuming a significant portion of daily calories late in the evening when the body is preparing for rest and cellular repair may lead to poorer glucose control and increased fat storage. Equally important is the establishment of a consistent eating window. The practice of compressing daily food intake into a defined period, often referred to as time-restricted feeding, aligns with the circadian rhythm's natural fasting, overnight, and feeding phases. This pattern allows for extended periods of insulin baseline, promotes cellular autophagy, a cleansing repair process, and may help regulate hunger hormones more effectively. It is less about severe caloric restriction and more about providing the body with a predictable, rhythmic pattern it can anticipate and manage optimally. Therefore, the third pillar of our Science Bounce Back method is circadian alignment. This is the practice of consciously synchronizing our daily behaviors, sleep, eating, light exposure, and even activity with our innate biological tempo. The practical application of this pillar involves several key synergistic strategies, prioritizing sleep as non-negotiable metabolic maintenance. This moves sleep from a passive state to an active strategic tool. It involves establishing a consistent sleep and wake time, even on weekends, to reinforce the circadian cycle. Creating a dark, cool, and technology-free sleep environment is essential, as artificial light at night, especially from screens, is a primary disruptor of melatonin production. Harnessing light as a primary signal, seeking bright, natural light exposure within the first hour of waking, powerfully reinforces the master clock's daytime phase. Conversely, minimizing exposure to bright and blue spectrum light in the evening supports the natural rise of melatonin. Implementing a consistent eating rhythm. This involves consuming the majority of daily calories earlier in the day and establishing a consistent cutoff time for eating in the evening, allowing for a 12 to 14-hour overnight fast. The focus is on regularity. Eating at wildly different times each day is akin to giving your metabolism conflicting time zone signals. Aligning activity with biological prime time. While any movement is beneficial, scheduling more demanding physical exertion earlier in the day, when core body temperature and hormone levels peak for performance, may yield greater benefits and is less likely to interfere with the wind-down process necessary for quality sleep. By honoring our circadian rhythm, we move from imposing arbitrary schedules on our body to collaborating with its innate wisdom. We stop fighting the natural tide of energy and instead learn to sail with it. This alignment reduces systemic stress, harmonizes our hunger hormones, optimizes metabolic processing, and fortifies the willpower and cognitive clarity we cultivated in our earlier foundations. The result is a state of metabolic resilience, where the body operates efficiently and predictably. With our environment designed, our nourishment optimized, and our rhythm aligned, we have constructed a powerful, self-reinforcing system for health. However, systems are static. Life is dynamic. The final step of transformation is not about building a perfect structure, but about cultivating the adaptive intelligence to maintain its integrity through inevitable change, challenge, and growth. This is the journey from external management to internal mastery. We have journeyed through the foundational layers of sustainable change. We have learned to design our environments, reprogram our habitual loops, compose meals that speak the language of satiety, and align our daily rhythms with our inner biological clock. Together, these practices form a robust, self-reinforcing system, a sanctuary of health built on evidence and self-understanding. Yet, any system, no matter how well constructed, will eventually encounter stress tests. The vacation that disrupts your eating schedule, the work deadline that hijacks your sleep, the emotional storm that triggers an old craving. This is not a sign of failure. It is the defining feature of a human life. The ultimate goal, therefore, is not to create a perfect, frictionless existence, but to develop the adaptive capacity to navigate imperfection without abandoning the path. This final evolution is the shift from external management to internal mastery. Mastery is rooted in a remarkable scientific truth, neuroplasticity. The brain is not a static organ, fixed in its patterns by adulthood. It is dynamic, capable of forming new neural connections and weakening old ones throughout life. Every time you consciously choose a new response to an old cue, taking a walk instead of scrolling through the pantry when stressed, you are not just performing a behavior, you are physically forging a new neural pathway. With repetition, this pathway becomes stronger, more automatic, while the old, unused pathway begins to atrophy. This is the biological basis of lasting change. You are not just acting differently, you are literally rewiring your brain's map of possibility. The tool that facilitates this rewiring, bridging the gap between conscious knowledge and unconscious habit, is mindful metacognition. This is the practice of observing your own thoughts, emotions, and impulses with detached curiosity rather than being reflexively controlled by them. In the context of our journey, it is the ability to notice a craving for a late-night snack and to pause, creating a critical space between the impulse and the action. In that space, you can engage the prefrontal cortex, your conscious CEO, to ask investigatory questions. What am I truly feeling? Is this physical hunger or emotional fatigue? What need is this craving attempting to meet? This practice dismantles the automaticity of the habit loop. It inserts a moment of choice where once there was only compulsion. Research in mindfulness-based interventions for eating behaviors shows that this non-judgmental awareness reduces episodes of binge eating and emotional consumption by decoupling the sensation of craving from the imperative to act. You learn that a craving is a transient wave of neural activity, not a command. It will crest and subside if you do not fuel it with action. This is the epitome of working with your brain, using conscious awareness to modulate subconscious drives. This leads to the final and perhaps most profound recalibration, the shift in self-identification. Lasting transformation becomes anchored not when you are following a plan, but when you have integrated new principles into your identity. The question changes from, am I on a diet? To what would a person who values their metabolic health, respects their circadian rhythm, and understands their body's signals do in this situation? You are no longer an outsider enforcing rules upon yourself. You are living from a new core narrative. You are someone who prioritizes sleep because you understand its metabolic necessity. You are someone who builds satisfying meals because you respect the science of satiety. You are someone who designs their environment for success because you acknowledge the limits of willpower. This identity-level change is self-perpetuating. Actions that align with your core self require less effort and generate less internal conflict. Within this framework, physical activity undergoes a fundamental reframing. It ceases to be a punitive calorie-burning exercise, a debt to pay for dietary indiscretion. Instead, it becomes joyful movement, a celebration of capability, a tool for stress resilience, a potent signal to the body of vitality and strength. The focus shifts from the energy expended to the experience itself. The feeling of vitality after a brisk walk, the mental clarity following a yoga session, the sense of accomplishment from progressing in a strength routine. This approach ensures sustainability because the motivation is intrinsic, linked to immediate positive feelings, rather than extrinsic, tied solely to a distant weight loss goal. Inevitably, there will be plateaus. The body is a homeostatic organism, brilliantly designed to resist change and maintain equilibrium. A weight loss plateau is not a biological conspiracy, but a signal to engage your mastery with compassionate curiosity. It may indicate the need for a slight recalibration, a check on portion sizes, a variation in exercise, a stress audit, or a focus on sleep quality. Sometimes it is simply an invitation to practice patience, to trust the system, and to recognize that non-scale victories, improved energy, stable mood, better sleep, stronger muscles, are the true metrics of a transforming life. Thus, the science-backed method culminates not in a final destination, but in a resilient, adaptive stance towards your own well-being. You have moved from seeking an external protocol to cultivating an internal compass. The pillars, environmental design, the satiety framework, circadian alignment, and mindful metacognition are not temporary steps, but permanent lenses through which you view your choices. Weight loss in this context is not the primary pursuit, but a natural, albeit sometimes nonlinear, byproduct of a body and brain brought into greater harmony. The journey we have outlined is iterative, not linear. Some days will embody full mastery. Others will require a gentle return to the basics of environmental design or circadian rhythm. This ebb and flow is part of the process, not a deviation from it. The ultimate transformation is this: you are no longer at war with your own biology. You have become its keenest student and its most compassionate steward. You have learned to listen to its language, respect its rhythms, and nurture its systems. In doing so, you have unlocked the only kind of change that can truly endure: A change built not on restriction, but on the profound and sustainable alignment of knowledge, action, and self. And so our story today closes not with an ending, but with a new beginning. A beginning rooted in self-knowledge. The science-backed method isn't a rigid set of rules. It's a lens through which to see yourself with more curiosity and compassion. It's understanding that your journey is unique, a story written in the language of your own biology and experiences. We hope this story has given you not just information, but illumination, a new way to see the path forward. If it resonated with you, if you believe in the power of stories to transform health, please subscribe to Health Storytellers. Hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next exploration into the science of living well. We would love to hear your story. What part of this journey resonated most with you? What is one small, intentional change you might design for your environment this week? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's build a community of support and shared understanding. Thank you for listening. Remember, the most sustainable transformation is the one that feels not like a battle, but like coming home to yourself. Until next time, be gentle, be curious, and keep telling yourself a healthier story.